Morning. Let the room be still. Not the stillness of a clock, but the stillness that is not measured. Something in you must listen that is not the ear. The physical ear can never hear truth any more than the physical tongue can utter it. Truth is not conveyed, it is discerned between the lines. Now, if you are waiting for words to perform surgery on your fear, you will miss the operation. It takes a split second of silence, no argument, no bargaining, and then, if you are attentive, the truth rushes in of itself. We begin here because morning in the human scene is always the same story dressed in fresh clothes. The mind awakens and counts needs. More time, more money, more health, more chance. Prayer then becomes pleading. You approach a distant giver, you make your case, you sweeten your case, you amend your case. If it be thy will, if I improve, if I promise. Supply becomes a chase, God becomes a moving target. You add hours, you add sentences, you add sincerity. And the heart grows thin under the weight of asking. Now then, the shock. The human scene is not where God is found. There is no God in the bargaining room. My kingdom is not of this world. It isn't even an improved this world. It isn't even a perfected version of lack and chase. It is another order, another government, another atmosphere altogether. And begging, do not take offense at the word. Begging is only the proof that we are still seated inside the human court, presenting petitions to a judge who never arrives. Nobody has ever entered the kingdom by strengthening their plea. Do you hear this? Begging is not a moral failure. It is not a stain on your character. It is a location of consciousness. You cannot heal begging with more effort. You must leave the place from which it speaks. You do not polish a chain to make it freedom. You do not perfect a desert and call it a garden. You step out. How? Not by a better sentence, not by a heavier push, but by a yielding that is so small the mind almost misses it. A moment when you stop reaching and let the inside fall quiet. In that quiet, grace is already present. Not coming, present. We are not here to teach you to ask for less, or to ask more cleverly. We are not here to reduce your list. We are here to end the game in which lists are made from fear. To enter a consciousness where asking from fear has no oxygen. My kingdom is not of this world means, stop trying to negotiate with wind. The wind will not sign your contract. Leave the chamber where wind is law. Come into the room where grace governs. So, for this morning, let us be done defending our begging or condemning it. Both are the same prison. Let us admit its root, living in the human scene, taking law, chance, and personal deserving as our masters. And let us consent, just for a breath, to that split second of silence in which the personal I relaxes. Do not strain, do not prove. Be still enough that the kingdom may announce itself. Then we will speak, not as beggars pleading for weather to change, but as those who have stepped into the climate of grace. Now, if there is any usefulness to our gathering, let it be in this. We stop trying to mix kingdoms. Either we are in the realm of cause and effect, personal planning, anxious comparison, and the counting of coins, or we are under grace. There is no blended middle. You cannot put one hand on the clock and one hand on eternity and expect the same heart to beat. Oil and water do not blend. Law and grace do not share a throne. This world has its ruler and its rules. It measures worth by income and image, by proximity to power and the luck of timing. It ranks by resumes. It bows to contacts. It kneels to trends. Therefore, fear is its sacrament. Fear of missing it, losing it, being late to it, being seen without it. And prayer in that climate degrades into bargaining. If I promise, will you deliver? If I correct, will you protect? If I network harder, will I be remembered? Nobody ever enters the kingdom by tightening the knots of worldly rope. My kingdom is not of this world, not an improved this world, not luckier conditions, not safer statistics. Another basis altogether, another government. The human scene is a market of events moving in and out, up and down, hour by hour. Supply there is a transaction, wages for work, favor for flattery, applause for performance, arriving today and exiting tomorrow. Under grace, supply is not an event that enters. It is government, an inner rule that, once discerned, orders the outer without consulting it. Like the principle of mathematics, it does not arrive in the room when you write the correct figures. It was governing before the chalk touched the slate. You do not summon the law of buoyancy. You relax and float because it is already so. Now then, hear the difference. In this world you plan, you insure, you hedge, and the mind grows old in a day. Under grace you are governed. The same impulse that tells a bird when to move and a tide how far to reach silently orders your steps. Not improved circumstances first, but a different center. No longer the personal I straining to secure a future, but the invisible is that is present now. There is no fear in that basis because there is no negotiation left. What would you trade with what is? Do not make the mistake of importing worldly methods into a heavenly premise. You cannot bribe principle. You cannot flatter grace. You cannot frighten the kingdom with deadlines. My kingdom is not of this world. Therefore, stop trying to secure heavenly outcomes by worldly means. Give up the ledger. Give up the bargain. Give up the proud promise and the desperate plea. They share the same street. Retire from that district. Come home to government. You say, but must I not act? Yes, but not as a beggar bargaining with chance. Act as one under orders you did not draft, poised because the basis is settled. Then the outer is addressed in its place, as effect, not cause. When we abide there, supply is not obtained, it is recognized. It was never absent. It was only masked by the noise of a realm that cannot hear spirit. Now, take your stand where grace governs, and let this world do what it does. You will remain in it, but not of it, and the measure of your day will no longer be its coins, its clocks, or its whispers, but the quiet certainty that the government is upon His shoulder. Now then, if we are under government and not in negotiation, who are we here? Applicants? No. Students forever? No. Joint heirs. Hear it without the ear. Joint heirs. An inheritance prior to performance, prior to mood, prior even to the day's success or failure. The kingdom is not a wage packet. It is a household, and you are born into it by grace. It is the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Not to rent it to you, not to bid it to the highest hour of devotion. To give. The very words are impersonal. Pleasure. Give. Kingdom. No bargaining verbs in them. Now, do not confuse heirship with entitlement. Entitlement is the ego's counterfeit. It says, I deserve, and it counts virtues like coins. Heirship says nothing about I deserve. Heirship rests in it is, quiet, certain, impersonal. In this world, inheritance is litigated, contested by documents and moods. In my kingdom, it is established in grace before you lift a finger or lower a head. Therefore, the heir does not plead for bread at his own table. The branch does not beg the vine for sap. The ray does not file a request to the sun. Look hard, with love but without lying, at the pride in begging. Do you see it? The personal I takes the throne and sets about managing outcomes. If I cry harder, if I promise longer, if I push my sentences to heaven with enough heat, God will move. Nobody has ever moved God with syllables. The physical tongue cannot utter truth. The physical ear cannot hear it. Begging believes it can persuade the infinite to adjust to a frightened me. That is pride disguised as piety. And the twin of it is despair, which mutters, I have failed to earn. Pride and desperation, twins of the same house, both worshiping a personal I that imagines control. In Christ, you do not beg, you abide. This is the hook. Let it catch. You abide, which means you reside. You do not visit the kingdom on your good days and evacuate on your bad. You live there now. Abiding is not laziness. It is location. It is the end of roaming for better odds. And abiding bears fruit of itself because the government is present. Not by dint of asking, not by temperature of emotion, but by isness. I am the vine, ye are the branches. A statement not of reward, but of relationship. How then shall we live as heirs without slipping into superiority? The answer begins here. Remove the personal I from the throne. The heir is not an inflated person. The heir is the disappearance of the claimant. When the I that argues worthiness relaxes, the is that is Christ stands forth, and supply is recognized as already established. Not one in this room receives because they outbid another. Not one is refused for yesterday's weather in the mind. Now then, consent to be where you are kept. Return to residence. Let grace, not deserving, define the day. And watch the quiet cease of begging as the royal poise of heirship takes your seat. Now then, let us put our finger on the nerve. The personal I is the beggar. Begging looks like humility to the eye that measures by tears. But discern between the lines, and you will see it standing on a very personal platform. My need, my plan, my timing, my demonstration. This is not humility. This is the self arranging the universe and calling it prayer. If only I ask more purely, if only I fast more severely, if only I phrase it correctly. What is the subject of every sentence? I. And the louder the plea, the more the hidden author clings to its pen. Pride, in the way we use the word here, is not swagger. It is authorship. It is reliance on a self projected into a future, calculating, hedging, and attempting to make supply occur. That is why fear always walks with it. Fear is the confession that you believe the outcome rests on you. When you tremble, you are telling on yourself. I am counting on my management, my preparation, my cleverness. And desperation? Same root. The voice changes from boast to whimper, but the center is identical. I have failed to produce. Pride and desperation are twins born of one parent, a personal sense trying to secure life from the outside. Hear me, and hear it behind the words. Nobody, nobody enters the kingdom while clinging to personal authorship over supply. My kingdom is not of this world. Therefore, it is not of the personal planner, not of the calendar mind, not of the ledger and its fright. The branch does not schedule the sap. The tide does not write a memo to the moon. In the kingdom, supply is not an event you cause. It is the nature of the government under which you live. To insist on my demonstration is to take the throne for a moment and discover it burns. Now, we are not erasing responsibility in the human scene. We are erasing a false responsibility, to be the source, the clock, and the form giver of your good. Conduct remains. Integrity remains. The simple decencies of life do not vanish under grace. They are purified. Work becomes expression, not leverage. Craft is devotion, not a bargaining chip. You show up, but not as a supplier trying to force a harvest from rocky soil. You show up as a transparency through which the government shows itself. You sign the contract in front of you, but you do not sign for the universe. Mark the difference. The personal I believes it must make something happen and then prays for help. The heir consents to be governed and then acts from that rest. One drafts outcomes and lives in tension. The other receives order and moves in poise. As long as you believe the pen is in your hand, you will fear the page. As soon as you yield the authorship, the sentence writes itself through you, clean, inevitable, unhurried. Now then, if the I is not the supplier, how do we exit this habit of mental management? By no longer feeding it with time. The beggar lives in what was and what might be. The heir abides in what is. We will come to this plainly, for the door of release does not swing on better phrasing, but on a split second in which the personal claimant relaxes, the future drops off, and the government of grace announces itself as now. Now then, let us come to it plainly. The kingdom of heaven is a state of grace which can only be experienced now. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, now. There is no kingdom of heaven yesterday, and there is no kingdom of heaven tomorrow. The minute you attempt to live in time, memory, or projection, you have stepped out of grace and into management. And with management comes fear. My kingdom is not of this world, and time is one of this world's gods. Bow to it, and you have already confessed a beggar's citizenship. Try it. Try to live a minute from now. Breathe and attempt to inhabit 60 seconds ahead. You cannot. A minute from now is a complete vacuum, no food there, no life there. Only pictures, promises, or terrors thrown on the blank wall by the personal mind. And begging lives off those pictures. What if? When will? Suppose that. The noises multiply, and though your hands are full, your heart starves in a future that never arrives. Now turn and try to live a minute ago. You meet a tomb of impressions. You may decorate it with stories, but it is still stone. Regret kneels to it and calls the stone a teacher. Meanwhile, life stands present, unreceived. Scarcity is almost entirely time-made. Listen to fear. You will hear a calendar speaking. It is the voice of not enough later, not safe soon, too late already. You can be sitting before a table with bread on it, and fear whispers, tomorrow will remove it. And at that word you become hungry before your body is empty. You can have strength in your limbs, and anxiety paints a diagnosis for next winter. and the body, obedient to its emperor, begins to tremble now. Comparison is the same spell. You set yourself against another's yesterday or tomorrow and invent lack where none exists. In the kingdom, there is neither earlier nor later. There is presence. Whenever the rose blooms, it is now. It has no memory of buds, no premonition of petals on the ground. It is bloom. Do not mistake me. We do not throw away the clock in the human scene. We use it, but we do not worship it. Planning may occur, but consciousness must not live there. You may mark a date, lay out a sequence, write a budget, and then return immediately to now, where the plan is received, cleaned, and governed. A plan written from anxiety is just a long, polite beg. A plan written from presence is an outline grace is free to fill or to erase. Take no thought for the morrow is not irresponsibility. It is spiritual integrity. Tomorrow will take thought for the things of itself, because the same government that is here will be there when there is a there to be. So the first act of heirship is not accumulation. It is return. Return to now until the mind stops insisting on its own management. How? Not with more sentences, but with less. Pause. Let one thought come to its period and do not pick up the next. A split second of silence, just that, and the pressure to leave this moment loosens. In that instant, grace announces itself as the only time there is. You are no longer manufacturing outcomes across a string of tomorrows. You are consenting to be governed where life actually is. The heir lives in now. The beggar lives in time. Choose, and choose again and again, each return a small abdication of a private throne. Each return a quiet coronation under grace. And then decisions, movements, words, checks, remedies, reconciliations. These appear as needed, not as managed projections, because their source is present, and presence is enough. Now, let us be exact. The physical ear can never hear truth any more than the physical tongue can utter it. Do you hear that? It must be discerned between the lines. Spirit speaks spirit to itself. Words at best are footprints, evidence that a life has passed this way. But the way is not ink, it is awareness. My kingdom is not of this world, and the mouth and the ear belong to this world. Therefore, do not lean on them as if they could open the door. They may point, they cannot enter. What enters? Not a sentence, not a brighter thought. There is a split second, hardly time at all, when a thought stops. One thought comes to its period, and there is no hurry to pick up the next. And in that unguarded interval, something not born of the mind rushes. It is not mental reassurance. It does not argue with the lack. It does not promise futures or rearrange figures. It is a presence. You know it because the body unclenches without orders. The breath lengthens without technique. And the fear that shouted a moment earlier has no audience. The earth melts there, not because you constructed a better statement, but because the government is present and recognized. Make no mistake, affirmations, statements, readings, they have their place. They wash the window. They steady the hand at the keyboard. They can prepare the soil, but they are not the harvest. Do not confuse repetition with realization. You may declare truth and still be clinging to a personal I, trying to improve itself with spiritual syllables. Silence is the harvest field. In silence, truth does not arrive as words. Truth arrives as itself. Now then, practice as you breathe. When lack screams, do not wrestle it. Do not answer 1,000 anxious words with 1,000 religious words. Keep quiet. Let one thought complete and refuse the next for a heartbeat. Just that. Sit at the desk, at the sink, in the car, no posture to impress heaven, and let the inward fist unclench. Do nothing for 2 heartbeats. If another thought presents, let it pass without ownership. Wait until the inner poise appears. Not courage, poise. Then, if a word forms, it will be few. If an act is needed, it will be clean. Grace does not make you passive. Grace removes the beggar, and with the beggar gone, action is obedience rather than negotiation. At some specific moment, 10 o'clock in the morning, midnight, 3 a.m., while washing a cup or waking from a dream, the hinge turns. Up to that point, you have been a student of truth, repairing your thought, arranging your practice. Then, without trumpet and without teacher present, the weight shifts. You discover you are no longer responsible for running your life. A laugh may come, or tears without story. It is the relief of government. You are under grace. Nobody can time this for you. Nobody. Prepare the room by returning to now, and in that small abdication, again and again, the throne is cleared. My kingdom is not of this world. It is not imported by holy sentences. It is received in the instant the personal I yields into silence. A split second is enough, because eternity is always that short. Stay until the poise is felt. Then rise, speak less, do the one necessary thing, and let grace announce tomorrow, when tomorrow becomes now. Now then, up to a point, we are students. We read, we listen, we repeat. We trim the mind's branches and sweep its floor. Nothing wrong in it. It prepares the window. But there is a definite point of transition in time and space when the sun is no longer a lesson on the page. It is light in the room. Not more argument, not a better statement, a change of government. At some specific moment, unannounced, often in the dullest minute, the words you have honored cease being propositions and stand forth as presence. You know because something lets go inside where no hand can reach. The strain to make life happen loosens. You are not waiting for a future to endorse you. You are not begging a sky to decide. The yoke slides off. Responsibility, as you imagined it, personal authorship over outcomes, drops away. Understand me. This is discontinuity. It is not an improvement of the old posture. It is the end of it. You relax, not into laziness, but into government. You are not passive. You are carried. A different center takes the lead. The mind will try to get up and drive again, out of habit, but it has lost the keys. Fear still knocks, but it has no deed to the house. My kingdom is not of this world, ceases to be a banner, and becomes the air you breathe. You remain in this world, yet inwardly you have left its jurisdiction. From that moment, you never again feel that the running of your life rests upon the shoulders of a private I. And when, in some hour, that feeling tries to return, you recognize it as foreign and decline the package. What changes? The temperature drops. Drama thins. The calendar still shows bills and duties. Bodies still require food, rest, remedies. Phones still ring. But the bargaining voice is without office. Deadlines no longer masquerade as deities. Supply, which once arrived as cliff-edge rescues or as long droughts broken by storms, becomes simple, ordinary even. Quiet bread on a table. The right word before the wrong one leaves your mouth. The check posted without parade. the apology given before bitterness can harden. You are surprised at the lack of surprise. Grace governs, so effects appear as needed, without neon. Do not measure this transition by fireworks. Often there is no trumpet, no vision, no sudden bank balance to flatter the senses. Sometimes only this. The desperation is gone. The questions stop chewing you. The edge is off the voice that used to negotiate with God. You find yourself unhurried where you used to sprint. You sleep. You wake without reaching for weather reports of fortune. That is evidence. Nobody needs to hear your story. Nobody. Protect the sanctity of the shift by refusing to market it. Now then, if we are heirs, the evidence will not be boast but bearing, dignity without defiance, a royal poise that neither flatters nor bargains, that says little and does the one necessary thing. Not superior, not aloof, governed. From here we turn to the day. Bills, bodies, relationships, not as beggars at a window, but as those under grace who let their living be the quiet sign that the government is upon His shoulder. Now then, let us walk into the day without changing kingdoms. Bills on the table, bodies with their signals, work that wants attention, housing that needs decision, relationships that ask for words. Watch how quickly the mind converts each into a bargaining session. If I call 3 more times, if I explain myself better, if I pray harder for favor, if I promise a stricter diet, if I flatter the landlord, if I compose the perfect apology. All of it, negotiation. All of it, this world. My kingdom is not of this world. Therefore, the method must not be bargaining. The method is abiding. How, in the hour of invoice or ache, does an heir proceed? First, retire from pleading. Not with defiance, not with theater. With a return. Thy grace is sufficient now. Not as a charm, not as a trade. As an entry into consciousness. Let one thought complete and neglect the next. A split second will do. In that unguarded interval, poise appears. You can feel it as tangibly as a hand opening. The breath steadies. The throat unlatches. The pressure to fix subsides. Only then act. Not 10 calls. 1. Not 3 paragraphs of self-defense. 1 clear sentence, or none. Not a panic purchase. A measured step that your integrity can sign. Supply first. Instead of, please give me enough, abide in, I am under government now. Then do the clean thing in front of you. Send the invoice you delayed. Pay what is honest today without melodrama. Decline the expense that flatters fear. Fewer frantic calls to chase money. More accurate figures. More silence where stories once begged. Under grace, supply is recognized as present order, so the needed channel appears without your manipulation. An old client remembers. A refund clears. An idea ripens. Not magic. Government. Bodies. Do not argue with symptoms for hours or bury them under brave slogans. Retire a moment from the body's theater and let the inner climate settle. Thy grace is sufficient now. If a remedy is indicated, it will be simple and timely. If rest, you will rest without guilt. If a call to a practitioner or a doctor is needed, you will make it without shame and without making a god of it. Heirship does not excuse negligence. It ends panic. The body is not your source or your enemy. It is a servant in the human scene, better served by poise than by pleading. Work and housing. Cease the manipulation that smells of fear. Padding resumes with noise, forcing charm into emails, rushing applications at midnight to outrun ghosts. Sit a breath. Bow inward. Then put your name only where your integrity can live. Fewer follow-ups designed to twist arms. More exactness. If the door is yours, it opens. If it does not, you do not bleed to prove worth. You remain available, not desperate. Relationships. Stop begging to be understood. In the split second of silence, you will know whether to speak or to be still. Often, you will say less than your fear wanted, and it will be truer. Apologies will be shorter and sooner. Boundaries will be cleaner, without lecture. You will make fewer manipulative explanations and offer more straightforward presence. Where reconciliation is right, it will happen without theater. Where distance is merciful, it will be maintained without cruelty. This is royal poise. Not passivity, not superiority. Governed action without anxious pleading. In Christ, you do not beg, you abide. And abiding produces right activity, accurate, timely, unhurried, because the government is present now. You will find that what once took 10 steps of worry takes 1 step of obedience. Fewer words, fewer bargains, more doing of the one necessary thing. And when the mind tries to drag you back into the marketplace, you know the way out. A split second of silence, and the heir resumes the throne. Not to rule people or events, but to rest under grace where bills, bodies, and bonds are handled without panic and without pride. Now then, having taken our seat, let us face the next temptation squarely. Heirship without ego. How is it lived? By remembering what cannot be remembered with the mind. The source is impersonal. The personal I is not the doer, not the provider, not the thinker of the true thought, not the author of supply. My kingdom is not of this world. Therefore, nothing in it can be used to decorate a person. Grace cannot be trimmed to fit a private name. It will not sit on a lapel as a medal. Tough love now. Nobody has spiritual status. Nobody. Nobody earns inheritance. The moment you feel superior for having heard a word of truth, you have departed the kingdom and entered a church of mirrors. The minute you secretly taste the sweetness of being further along, you are back in the beggars' district, only now the hat is velvet. Do you see? The beggar wears rags, or he wears robes. It is the same man if the personal I stands at the center, admiring its reflection. How do you know when ego is creeping in? Comparison. The side glance that measures your calm against another's trembling. Contempt for struggles you believe you outgrew. A private delight when your demonstrations line up while another's do not. Correcting with sharpness. Quoting principle to end a conversation rather than to heal a fear. Withholding help to teach someone a lesson and calling it wisdom. That odor is unmistakable. Superiority. And the instant it appears, the government is no longer felt. You are back to managing outcomes and guarding an image. You have left the kingdom to polish a crown that does not exist. What is the safeguard? Remembering the vine. The branch cannot boast of grapes. The sap is impersonal. It does not ask the branch for merit badges. It flows because it is its nature to flow. When grace governs, compassion appears as naturally as warmth from fire. You do not set out to be kind. You find yourself unable to judge. You discover a softness that is not sentiment and not approval of error. It is the simple inability to condemn because you have nothing personal to defend. The more grace supplies, the gentler you move, the quieter you speak. You become a blessing, not a judge. Others rest near you without being instructed because the atmosphere has no bargain in it. Now then, this must include the end of deserving and undeserving. Prejudice of any stripe is the beggar's arithmetic, counting worth by conduct, by creed, by color, by category. In the kingdom, there is no such table. He maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good. That is not a policy. That is nature. If you imagine some are less entitled to the warmth, you have placed yourself back under law and out from grace. Call nothing common that grace would reach. Drop your labels or lose your light. There is no middle. How to stay safe? Hide yourself. Speak less of my demonstration. Give without name. When the thrill of superiority flickers, stop. Now. A split second of silence. Let one thought end and do not adopt the next. And in that instant, you will feel the crown slide off and the government return. Then if a word is needed, it will heal. If an act is required, it will not advertise you. My kingdom is not of this world. There are no promotions in spirit, only transparencies. The air is humble because grace is not personal. It cannot be used to lift a person. It can only reveal presence. Remain in this world, but not of its ladders, not of its ranks. Be available, not admirable. And let the fragrance of humility be the surest evidence that supply is of God and not of you. Now then, let us put the axe to the stump. Call nothing common, do you hear? Not with the ear, between the lines. Peter's sheet lowered before his eyes was not a lesson in diets. It was an end to labels. Call nothing unclean that God hath cleansed. Not pigs. Perception. The moment you stamp a person, a condition, a part of yourself as unclean, you have taken your pen and written a border around grace. And the border will cage you first. Worthiness is a game of this world. Good people get, bad people lack. Keep the scoreboard, and you will live with fear even in your best hour. Why? Because judgment is a boomerang. If you believe God withholds from them because they are wrong, you will go to bed secretly afraid that God may withhold from you when you are wrong. And you always can find a wrong. That is why beggars love moral arithmetic. It gives them a lever. If I add 2 more virtues, if I subtract 3 more vices, perhaps then. This is not worship. This is bookkeeping before an idol. My kingdom is not of this world, therefore not of merit tables. The sun rises on evil and on good, because the sun has no tribunal. It has nature. Grace is not a reward for right asking or right behaving. Grace is government. Inheritance is not a medal pinned for service. It is identity recognized. Joint heirship is not sectarian. The Christ is not a tribal possession, not a denominational patent. Wherever the I that is presence is discerned, heirship is. Lao Tzu does not annul it. Buddha does not compete with it. Jesus unveils it. All point beyond person to presence, beyond race, creed, or conduct, to is. Now then, watch the mechanism. Judgment tightens the throat and closes the window. A label appears, about a neighbor, a nation, a body part, a bank balance, a self from 10 years ago. And in that instant, begging begins. You feel the need to argue, to prove, to correct, to earn. Stop. Now. Let one thought finish and refuse the next. A split second of silence. In that interval, the stamp lifts. The face of the other softens. Your own history loses its claws. The atmosphere clears for governance. When judgment drops, consciousness opens. When consciousness opens, grace governs. Naturally, without bargain. Tough love. Throw away your ruler. Nobody enters the kingdom carrying a measuring rod. Not to measure others, not to measure self. Nobody. Call nothing common that grace would touch. Do not name unclean what the sun still warms. This does not endorse error. It ends the pretense that condemnation produces order. It never has. Order is the government of grace, recognized now. So the practice is plain. Each time the mind reaches for its labels, retire a breath. Thy grace is sufficient now. Not to excuse, to expose. Expose the unreality of the scoreboard. In that small abdication, you will feel the government restore itself. Compassion replaces the itch to punish. Supply appears without moral theater. You remain in this world. Sign the check, make the amends, change the habit. But not of its worthiness games. From here we can abide, day by day, not counting merits, but returning to now, until only grace does the governing. Now then, let this be plain and remembered without ornament. In Christ, you are a joint heir, not a beggar. The journey we have taken is not a tour of ideas, it is a relocation. Out of time and fear and the personal I that negotiates for life, from that district we have stepped. Into now. Into a split second of silence. Into grace as government. This is not theory, it is a rule of living. Take no thought for tomorrow. That is not irresponsibility, that is refusing to live outside the only door where the kingdom is. Give up yesterday, its trophies and its terrors. Give up tomorrow, its promises and its punishments. Live where grace functions, now. If a plan is to be written, write it and return. If a remedy is to be taken, take it and return. If a conversation is to be had, have it and return. Return where? To the poise that does the governing. Here is your practice. Simple. Repeatable. When the demand to plead rises, when the throat tightens, when numbers glare, when the body complains, when a face before you stiffens, do not argue. Do not add religious sentences to anxious sentences and call that prayer. Let one thought end. Refuse the next. A split second of silence. Just that. In that interval, the beggar has no stage. In that interval, heirship is felt as ease, as a lightness at the center. Then act, or do not act, but do it from poise. Set your expectations like an adult in spirit. There will be hours of struggle. Keep quiet and go ahead and struggle. Nobody is interested in your drama. Nobody. Do not market your distress to purchase sympathy. Return. 10 times before noon if need be. 100 times in a hard night. Each return is abdication. Each abdication is coronation. You are not failing when you re-enter now. You are reigning by consent. Now then, make of this a daily rule. Morning. Sit before the traffic begins. Let a thought finish and dwell 2 heartbeats without picking up the next. Midday. Before sending, dialing, swallowing, pausing again. Evening. Lay the day down without story and touch the silence. This is not penance. This is governance. Over time, action will become fewer and truer. The need to be seen will fade. The calendar will serve rather than command. You will remain in this world. You will pay bills, feed bodies, answer letters, keep appointments. But not of it. You will be a blessing because you carry no bargain in your atmosphere. The evidence will not be noise. It will be inner poise. That poise is the sign of inheritance. Abide and let grace, only grace, do the governing. Now then. Now, always.